Let's face it, too many deals happen because they can happen, not because they should. Buyer-led M&A flips that approach. It's about starting with intention and asking why at every step. Why does this deal make sense? Why will it create value? Why is now the right time? Instead of chasing reactive opportunities, buyer-led M&A is about leading with strategy. It's about being proactive, going after the right companies, finding the vision, and building the plan to make the deal successful before the ink dries on the LOI. At Deal Room, we've worked with hundreds of M&A teams to adopt this approach, helping them align their M&A strategy with long-term goals and avoiding common pitfalls. And now we've made it even more accessible with a simple framework for implementing buyer-led M&A. This framework gives your team the tools to line, execute, and deliver real value every time. Buyer-led M&A isn't about working to close a deal, it's about working to make the deal successful. Visit dealroom.net to learn more about the buyer-led M&A framework and transform your M&A process into a value-driving powerhouse. Here's to the deal.
Hello, M&A scientists. Welcome to the M&A Science Podcast, where we learn from the best in M&A to uncover proven techniques for enterprise value creation. If you're interested in learning more about how to optimize your M&A practice or want to get involved with our community of forward-thinking M&A practitioners, visit mascience.com and subscribe to our free weekly newsletter. If you want to keep up with us on the go, head over to LinkedIn and follow M&A Science. I'm your host, Kisan Patel, founder and CEO at Deal Room and chief scientist at M&A Science. Joining me today is John Orbe, Senior Associate General Counsel, M&A at Emerson, a seasoned attorney with extensive experience in managing complex, large-scale M&A transactions across borders. If you're not familiar with Emerson, Emerson delivers a range of engineering services, manufactures industrial automation equipment, precision measurement instruments, and provides software engineering solutions for industrial, commercial, and consumer markets, traded on NYSE under EMR. Today, we're going to explore the intricacies of doing large-scale M&A and comparing the challenges to small-scale, big, small, and just have a little fun in this conversation. John, how you doing today?
Great. Good to see you. Welcome to Emerson.
Yeah, thank you for hosting in global headquarters here in St. Louis.
St. Louis, Missouri. Welcome.
All the magic, all the big deals happen.
That's right.
Hey, before we jump into it, I got to admit, we've been working with Emerson for like 6 years now, and I thought this was going to be a pretty sleepy, boring, you guys would be doing some not so fun stuff. And to my surprise, I've been absolutely blown away on the deals you've done. And I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about it, but there's always the big headliner deals, the $11 billion acquisition of Aspen Tech. They did a $14 billion divestiture of Copeland. Then you did another acquisition in the several billions. I think you just announced one not even a week ago, another multi-billion dollar acquisition. But then you got these deals that you don't get in the news. A lot of interesting smaller deals. And then I was just surprised. You guys are really doing a lot of interesting deals. And the culture of the team is, to my surprise, not as old school stodgy either. I feel like I'm in kind of a Silicon Valley company with just the way they are pretty open-minded and forward-thinking.
Yeah. I feel very blessed to be, as an M&A specific person, M&A lawyer, to be at a company like Emerson where we're doing amazing M&A. All the type of things you mentioned, from public co takeovers to $14 billion divestiture of about a third of our company, and all the cross-border deals around the world. For a kid born and raised in St. Louis, to be able to sit here in St. Louis for a Fortune 500 company and do M&A work, and legitimate, interesting, challenging M&A work around the globe, all different sizes, it's really a blessing, and I love it being M&A at Emerson. It's a company, a 130-year-old company, but really M&A is kind of backbone built up over M&A, and we're always doing deals, always looking at deals. So it's a great place to be in the M&A space.
I'm like you, happy to be part of the journey, even though I'm like a much smaller part of the journey. Can we kick things off with a little bit about your background?
Sure. I started my career in private practice at a big law firm, AmLaw 100. How I got into M&A is kind of fell backwards into it. I graduated law school during the Great Recession, and I had done a summer associateship at my firm. But as a lot of large firms were doing at the time, my start date was deferred for quite a long time. So I was sitting there kind of waiting to start. And at the time, I thought I was going to go into litigation. It's kind of what I had been working towards in law school. It's what I thought I'd do. They called me up almost a year early to start, and they said, we got a spot for you, but you have to do corporate M&A. Do you want it? I was like, yes, I want a job. Also, what is M&A? I vaguely knew what M&A was, of course, but it was not my bread and butter, not what I'd really been trained on, but I wanted a job. So I took it, and I was in a corporate law group of this large law firm, so I did lots of stuff like general corporate work, corporate governance, commercial agreements, did capital markets, security offerings, different things, Securities Act compliance. But the thing that I found that I loved was the M&A work. It ended up, over the course of my years there, being my primary focus. I just love the deal work, the strategy, the intellectual stimulation, the game planning, the preparation for negotiations, going into the negotiations, and then you always have those last couple of days leading up to a signing or closing where it's like really crunch time, lots of late nights. It's really that's when I get into the zone too. Like some people don't like those high pressure situations, but I feel like when I'm at my best. And M&A really provided that stimulation, and I just fell in love with it. My background, I'm an athlete. I played football in college, and it kind of gave me that same rush again of being an athlete, working with the team with that goal in mind, and then you're at the end, you kind of comes all together like you're doing a game, and then you get the result, and it's just such a rush to get that deal signed or closed, and that's fun. I love it. I'm a junkie.
That's what happens when you get an M&A.
Yeah.
I like that analogy with sports though, because you're right. It is teamwork. It is like high pressure.
Game planning, doing all the work and preparation. It's it's a good fit.
Did you feel that more so when you went from external counsel to in-house?
As far as the teamwork part
Both
of it?
like team and high pressure.
Yeah. Well, I guess, again, a second to finish my background. So I was at my law firm for about almost 8 years, doing all kinds of corporate work, but mostly M&A. Over that time, Emerson was actually my largest, or a client that I spent most of my time on. And I think what happens a lot of times is, with a lot of lawyers, is your client then has the need. So I saw Emerson had the opening to do full-time M&A, like I was saying, for a St. Louis kid, full-time M&A at a Fortune 500 in St. Louis. Jumped at the opportunity, so I switched from the law firm over to the in-house about a little over 6 years ago now, and I've loved it. I love the time here at Emerson. So I've been doing M&A for about 14 years altogether. So that's M&A background. But to touch on the teamwork part and all that with coming the in-house side, obviously you have the teamwork when you're in the law firm, but I think it goes up to another level when you're in-house because you have so many cross-functional teams and touch points. And to go back to a sports analogy and football analogy, you're almost like the quarterback, and you're kind of bringing it all together. You're at where I sit at the kind of intersection of all the different functional teams, whether it's IP or HR or tax or finance. Your teamwork and your ability to work cross-functionally, I think, goes up to another level. Because even at the law firm, you go cross-function in the law firm, but you're dealing with all lawyers. Here, you're dealing with people that aren't necessarily always lawyers. So that changes some of your language. Sometimes you have to explain things not in just legalese, and you have to learn how to assess business risk. You're maybe a little bit more pragmatic when you're in the in-house role, and it's been a good challenge. But I think the teamwork skills go to another level when you come to in-house and you're working with lots of different people, lots of different functions that aren't necessarily lawyers, and it's been a real joy actually to get that experience.
Helpful context.
Yeah.
And then let's just throw in a quick disclaimer. John's a lawyer. Take anything he says as a personal opinion, nothing associated with companies maybe or associated or affiliated with. And none of this is investment advice.
None of it's legal advice.
Don't listen
either.
to any of this. This is all just made up stuff. Like this is, And he's also a customer of Deal Room too. I'll put that out there for like, 6 years now?
Yeah. We got on Deal Room not long after I started here. So it was probably about 6 years. And we love Deal Room. We use it all the time. It's a great tool for us.
He gets paid to say that. So that's all disclaimers are out there. And by continuing listening to this podcast, you agree not to sue anybody for anything.
Yeah, love that.
Is that good? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, so big deals versus small deals.
Yeah.
You've worked on big scale, multi-billion-dollar deals to little transactions. What are your favorite deals to work on?
Ooh.
Favorite, least favorite?
I'm an M&A junkie, so I kind of like all the deals. Favorite are, I really like cross-border deals, especially when I'm dealing with a jurisdiction or a place that I haven't been before or touched before. I get to learn new things. When you have occasion to travel to a new country to work on a deal, that's really enjoyable. Love working the big deals too because they're just so complex. They get the headlines, and it's fun to like see something you've been working on pop up on the Wall Street Journal or something like that. So that's fun. I really do like them all. They all present their own challenges. It's easy to think that like the bigger deals are harder and the smaller ones are easier. Like just to kind of dismiss a small one because it's small, but small ones can be harder too. Particularly if you have like a counterparty who's maybe it's a founder and maybe they don't have regular counsel, so they hire like their buddy down the street who might be he might be a traffic attorney or a divorce attorney, not an M&A attorney. And that presents its own challenge when you're dealing with a counterparty that doesn't know the market in M&A and like what's customary and how M&A deals are done. Those sometimes can draw out a process. And even though it's a smaller dollar deal, sometimes they take just as much work and it can be a little frustrating, but we always get there. And that's one thing I love about M&A. Each deal is different. Each one presents its own challenges and you're learning something new every time. And it's always fun.
I mean, is that the main difference between like dynamics and challenge? If you look at a large scale deal, let's take away cross-border part. We'll bring that up separately, but just large scale versus a small deal. Do you think that's like what it really comes down to is the sophistication of legal counsel on the other side?
On the negotiation part, yes. So I will say on a big deal, particularly on like a divestiture side, we referenced our big one we did a couple years ago. There are a lot of work, especially on the divestiture side. If you're doing a carve out, you really have to get your arms around the perimeter of the transaction. It takes a lot of work to figure out what contracts are in, what assets are in, and how you split it out correctly. So they do take a lot of work from that perspective, more so than like maybe a smaller deal where there's less in the perimeter. It might be a little less prep work up front, but on the buy side, there's less diligence on a small deal versus a big deal where you're looking at lots of different things. But when it gets down to negotiation, sometimes, when you're dealing with on these big deals, you have very sophisticated counsel and the negotiations can get heated and frustrating. But at the end of the day, all the big lawyers, big firms kind of know what market is, and you kind of tend to go towards where things should go and kind of as expected. There'll be points where you disagree and you'll fight those out for sure. But it kind of goes on the right cadence as you expect it. These smaller deals with not the frequent M&A participants, they can be all over the place, and that presents its own challenge. Trying to corral them, make sure everybody's actually marching towards getting a deal done. And sometimes the issues that you end up fighting about, like you can't believe you're fighting about this issue because it's just the issues that should be the issues aren't being discussed, and they're fighting over something that's crazy. And it's always just the larger people might just not even address that because it's market, but trying to work with counsel that's maybe not as accustomed to it can really present a challenge sometimes.
You think it's just like the sentiment, like you come off as the big bad corporate attorney, and then here we're trying to defend the small player.
That happens too. I like to push it to my outside counsel to be the big bad corporate attorneys, and we try to play the good guys. No, I'm just kidding on that, but yeah.
So anything other pieces, because this comes up a lot where people are like, smaller deals are actually more complicated than the bigger deals. Yeah. And I'm like, why? But now you mentioned one thing, the divestiture part, right? Because you did some mega huge divestitures and you done some small divestitures. Do you guys buy anything small?
Yeah, we do. We buy small things. We do deals of all sizes, from a couple million to several billion. So it all gets in there. Another thing, I'll just go back to another sometimes complexity with the smaller deals is the big deals. It's all hands on deck. So there's both sides have the full army, the full teams there.
People.
So that helps marshal on too. Sometimes on the smaller deals, especially if we're Emerson, so we always kind of have the right resources, but sometimes the other side just doesn't have the bandwidth to, respond to diligence requests or do everything in a timely manner. And things can just drag on because they don't have the bandwidth to really match our M&A machine. And so there's that challenge too in doing with smaller ones.
So you can have the sophistication of the counsel. You end up like nitpicking a lot more details where you sort of have more of an understood what's market when there's big M&A attorney, big co M&A attorney versus with big co M&A attorney deals. And then, just smaller teams involved. So things could get dragged out further.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Okay. I'm just trying to get a sense.
Yeah,
I got friends that do M&A law and they always complain about the small deals. They never complain about the big deals because they're too busy working on the big deals. So I don't get to talk to them.
I think that's right. Yeah. Those smaller ones usually present, like the big ones are a lot of work, but the small ones present more headaches usually.
How does Emerson decide which deals to pursue and allocate resources towards?
That's a good question. We have a whole strategy department here who that's their job, is to decide what we go after. I'm more an execution guy.
I wanted to get the legal.
Yeah, I do. I do what they tell me, but they pick it and I make it happen. But no, we have a certain portfolio, so we obviously look at technologies that are complementary to that space. We're not just going to go buy something, even if it has great numbers, great EBITDA, great margins. If it doesn't fit in our portfolio, we're not going to go get it, of course. So stuff that fits in our portfolio, the numbers, the margins, the EBITDA has to be there. It has to make sense. You do the IRR calculations to make sure that it's going to be worthwhile. And they figure it out, and our team is great. You just look at our M&A record, and they're good at picking the ones to go after.
I'm impressed with them. Where you come in the picture, you mentioned business risk earlier, and this is something I'm really trying to learn too. Like, I'm looking at deals, building our pipeline, and you get these early conversations. At what point do you want to bring legal counsel in?
Oh, we here at Emerson, we like to be in from the start. Like before LOI, we want to be, if we're thinking about something, we want to help evaluate the regulatory risk. Like, is this something, especially in this day and age with the regulatory environment, there's more and more regulations coming out that you have to jump through. So we want to know about the potential regulatory risks or be able to identify those for the team. We want to help negotiate the LOI to make sure that the right provisions are in there. Going back to the smaller deals, I can't tell you how often we negotiated an LOI with the counterparty, but the other counterparty didn't even use legal counsel. And then the lawyers come in, they hire counsel, and the lawyers are like, well, they didn't have counsel for that LOI. Like, try to toss it aside. Yeah. So it's for that, we like to avoid that situation. We like to be involved in the LOI discussions, make sure we get all the right terms in there. And I think for anybody, the sooner you can get your M&A counsel involved, your legal counsel involved, the better.
So I'm one of those people. I think we can be bucketed as trigger happy. That I just want to get an LOI out. I already got the template.
Yeah.
I just want to go fill it out and start getting to a point when I know we're going to agree on a price and this and that. So I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to call my friend John, say, hey, I want you to take a look at this.
Get a lawyer. My legal advice is get a lawyer. So
okay. Yeah. But so we'll just role play this out a little bit.
Okay.
So I instead of me doing that, and then you get mad at me, I call you up and tell you, and I probably brief you on the deal, and you probably are still going to tell me I should have told you earlier. But what would be the key things that all of a sudden you would like weigh in on that LOI that maybe the deal person wouldn't?
It's every deal is different. Standard lawyer answer, it depends. So each deal is different. But some of the things you might want to look out for is there going to be an escrow or holdbacks, like the entire purchase price isn't paid at closing? What's the expectation with as far as reps and warranties or indemnities? one party thinks it's going to be an as is whereas deal with very limited recourse. The other party thought, no, we're going to have an indemnity. The LOI is a good time to flush that out, so you're not fighting that out later. So just kind of transaction structure like that. Are there going to be consulting agreements or employment agreements that are part of it? And let's flush that out up front. Things like that might be conditions to closing. If there's conditions to closing or certain assumptions underlying the deal, I think it's efficient to get those out at the LOI stage. So, make sure that everybody's on the same page. So there's a couple things that we might be looking for, pointing out in an LOI.
So like that makes a lot of sense. Like escrow hold. Hey, are you going to hold some money back? Like let's clear the air on that.
Yeah.
There's going to be requirements around reps and warranty or expectations. The employment agreement, the people side.
Yeah.
That, hey, there's going to be key people and what are we expecting to have agreements on certain key people, things like that. We want to clear the air on that. What about the cash balances and stuff like that? Like, does that stuff come up or?
Yeah, that comes up. Like you might have set an expectation like this purchase price, this is what we're willing to offer, but it's conditioned on diligence showing that you have X EBITDA or sales are on pace for this, or it's good to flush out those numbers that like, yes, this is our price, but we haven't actually done diligence yet. So this price is conditioned on the financials being there, no major red flag. It's not major lawsuits outstanding, things like that. To kind of put those assumptions on what the price is assumed on. So that way, if diligence uncovers something, you can say, yeah, that was our price, but we qualified it and you didn't meet these metrics that we had in our assumptions. So let's re-talk about the price.
So when we're talking about the deal and the target's like, oh, we're going to have our record quarter this year and we're going to close this, and they kind of use that to sort of push the price up a bit. I can put that in the LOI that, hey, this is expectation is you're going to close this quarter out at this certain amount.
Yeah, exactly. That can come in the LOI for sure.
It's like anything that goes that would be pretty material for us to like want to go back and renegotiate the deal.
Yeah. I mean, I think those are good things to put in the LOI. Kind of sets the stage. I mean, you hope that those things don't come up because you hope whatever the assumptions are, that they are there, and you just go forward on the exact terms that you put out there originally. But sometimes you have to have difficult conversations, and it makes sense to put those up front so that nobody's caught off guard. A seller, if they know that if they're not hitting what they said, they can't be that offended if you say like, look, we did it based on X, and you're not at X, you're at Y. We needed to re-talk about this. So,
what's like the wildest thing you've seen in an LOI?
I'm thinking of the ones I've personally done, and I can't even think of anything that's that crazy. But I have heard stories of like founders wanting things in the LOI, like tickets to something that's just off base, not part of the deal, like requests. I don't think we would ever entertain those in an LOI, but like sometimes you see some things that like are outside of what the actual deal is. Maybe they try to work those in. But no, I haven't really seen anything too crazy that you wouldn't expect in an LOI.
What about if there was terms of, I guess you would have those in there. Like if we're going to split this between an earn-out versus we're going to have owner financing, things like that, or contingent on getting a third-party lender, all that stuff would be in there.
Yeah, definitely. You want to know, particularly if you're like the seller and you want the deal not conditioned on financing, like this deal is not going to be contingent on financing. We're only doing this, buyer, if you have the financing. That's a good thing to get out right away. If there's an earn-out, again, because those can, I think earn-outs often just invite disputes, post-closing disputes. But if there's going to be an earn-out as a major part of the consideration for the deal, the LOI is a great stage to kind of start laying out the metrics, because that'll be a heavily negotiated point.
Binding versus non-binding?
They're usually always non-binding, because you can, stuff comes up that causes it to change. There'll be binding provisions like confidentiality, like everything in this LOI needs to remain confidential. That's binding. Let's agree that we're not going to disclose this. Exclusivity will sometimes be binding. Sometimes people won't do an LOI unless they get an exclusivity period, because they're not going to spend the time and resources. A buyer's not going to spend the time and resources to look at on a target if the target can just go around and sell it to somebody else the next day. So
that would make it binding then, if they
no.
want.
So I'm just saying sometimes the exclusivity provision is one of the binding provisions that you'd have. But most of the other terms, things I've been talking about, like the price, the assumptions, usually that's non-binding. They're non-binding LOIs. More
All are binding. There would be a binding element if we're asking for exclusivity.
The exclusivity provision would be binding itself, but you can have a LOI that it's not binding except for these 3 provisions that are binding.
Does that make sense? And then when do you throw breakup fees in there?
For big deals, yeah.
When you're just you screwed us over.
But,
wasted a lot of our time.
No. If it's like a deal that's going to really be transformative for a company, that is going to take a lot of their resources and time, they're going to really put a lot of risk out there. They reverse or both termination, reverse termination might come into the equation. Sometimes those are. Maybe they might just reference it in an LOI, but it actually gets negotiated in the deal docs and everything like that. But I think an LOI is also a great time to put that out there, like what expectations are.
All right. Case in point, I'm going to find my attorney next time.
Yeah.
Before I sign an LOI. What's the legal team look like at Emerson? How do you manage sort of the variables of your deal volume?
Emerson has a big legal team, but I'll talk about M&A legal teams since the topic. Our M&A legal team is very lean considering the volume of deal work we have. It's me and one other attorney, a paralegal, and our assistant. So
it's a very lean team.
Very lean team, especially considering we have our corporate development is 3 times as big as us. And so we kind of take on all the deals, but we will flex resources. Whether that's, since we do have a large internal department, whether that's bringing over an internal Emerson attorney from something else to help us for a little while, or using outside counsel on a secondment basis, because maybe we're really, M&A ebbs and flows, ups and downs. So it makes sense to kind of have a flexible approach like that. Like in this peak time when we're really busy, maybe we might get an external counsel as a secondment to come work with us, but we don't need a person year-round, full-time on salary, so they come work with us when we're really busy, and then they'll go back to their firm. That's one way we've approached handling the peaks and valleys.
So either pull from the general legal team in the company or use an external resource.
That's right.
How do you approach augmenting that team? Is there certain tasks that you prefer to delegate out to external versus keeping in-house?
We use external for a lot, or almost all our big deals. We'll keep some of our smaller deals in house, but external counsel will on the bigger deals we're using them. They'll generally take the pen on the major transaction agreements that, of course, we will weigh in heavily on and help get done. One thing we're doing more and more moving in house is due diligence. It's kind of a low-hanging fruit type. It's a expensive, especially when you're using a big AmLaw firm. It's a very expensive proposition, and it's something that we can usually be handled in-house potentially, or the lower cost vendors. So that's something we try to take off our external counsel. But a lot of the diligence, especially like on the for doing a divestiture, we'll do a lot of all that ourselves, and we have Emerson has a full M&A team, and we have our own tax team, HR, finance. We're able to rely on our own team to do a lot of the work, and the outside counsel is really just helping execute the deal.
What would be the thing that you'd really want external counsel to do on those bigger deals, knowing that you're going to get the best bang for your buck?
The transaction agreement, that's where they'll live. They'll live on helping draft, negotiate that. It's a big deal. The other side will also have very sophisticated counsel, so we're relying on them to help steer us, help negotiate against the big players on the other side too. That's really where we get good value. And these big deals can also be very complex. They have law firms have, even though we do a lot of M&A, law firms, that's all they do. So they see stuff even more than we do. So to help rely on their expertise and what they've seen in other deals, and they know how to get it done. So relying on them to help navigate us through the complicated waters.
I guess, yeah, especially on these cross-border deals as well. Having them.
Oh yeah, well then cross-border is interesting too. You definitely need good outside counsel there, particularly for the local law aspect. Like I know M&A, but I'm a U.S. attorney. I know like how to get deals done in the U.S., but there can be, I don't know the law in every single country around the world. There can be specific requirements for getting a deal done in an Asian country or somewhere in Europe that would never cross my mind to even put on the checklist to do. But for having external counsel will say like, oh no, you have to get this notarized and this has to go here, and someone just helping navigate the local law requirements. Then also, I know it's market in the U.S., but something market might be different in other countries. So relying on the external counsel, the local counsel, and just jurisdictions to help us with what's standard and how to get a deal done in those places is very important.
Localized expertise, working the transaction agreement. You mentioned the due diligence, pulling that in-house. Can you give me just a quick high level, like what does legal due diligence entail? Because I'm just imagining, I always think of every company, you have a bunch of employment contracts, bunch of customer contracts, bunch of vendor contracts across the board.
Yeah.
Is it just reviewing all those contracts? Like what else does it include?
That is probably the biggest and most time-consuming piece is reviewing contracts. You're reviewing for any unusual provisions, things like non-competes, like say you're on the buy side. If you're taking up on an agreement as a non-compete, you want to figure out how that's going to impact you. You're looking for things like indemnities in these contracts, depending on what space the business is in. A limitation, a caps on those liabilities can be very important. So looking at those sort of things. You're looking at the logistics for transfer, whether it requires a consent for assignment or change of control. So those things you have to comply with to actually move the contracts over. So it's a lot of contract review. You also will get into like corporate document review. So we're looking at their governing documents, basically sometimes maybe what they have to do, especially if there's like a large shareholder base. Like what are the requirements to get approval to do the deal? You look at their minutes, their board and shareholder minutes, because oftentimes they'll discuss issues that pop up. So you'll look at those and you might see something like, oh, you're discussing this litigation at this board meeting. What happened with that? Litigation is another thing the legal team dives into, the litigation profile. Is somebody getting sued all the time? Are they not getting sued all the time? Are there product liability risks with a certain business? Looking at the IP portfolio, have they adequately protected their IP portfolio? Is there really value in that? Are there gaps? Have you gotten the proper invention assignments from like employees or third parties? And then you're looking at the employee side, employment contracts, things like that, handling all the benefits and ERISA stuff and everything that comes with that. Tax attorneys are weighing in. There's a lot more. Contracts is what people really think about, but there's a lot more to it than just looking at contracts.
I'm going to stop writing off the value of legal counsel now.
Yeah.
That's a lot of little things that really add up. And some of these things you mentioned tend to be pretty cross-functional. Like I can imagine the employment agreements, you start noticing some things, you got to talk to HR about it. And
I was going through that list, and I'm lucky enough here at Emerson that we have a team, that we have M&A lawyer, or a lawyer in those functional areas that's kind of dedicated to our M&A team. So I personally am not the one checking the IP portfolio. We have an IP attorney that helps us. We have tax attorneys that helps us. We have HR attorneys. We have litigators that all get involved. Not just us in the M&A legal. They all, different lawyers in different functional areas are getting involved. And I'm fortunate enough to be able to rely on those other people to help.
What are the biggest legal complexities speaking of cross-border deals, what, all these big deals you've done, are they all cross-border?
Yeah, they're interesting. The main genesis of the deal is usually U.S. based. Obviously U.S. seller, usually U.S. buyer, or vice versa. But when you're dealing with handling deals of this size, there's always international components, because you have subsidiaries. All for a company like us all over the world. We're buying somebody. There's often subsidiaries all around the world. So although it might be a U.S. based, U.S. centric, there are cross-border aspects coming into it for sure. And that's, I talked a little bit earlier about how important it is to have good local counsel. We augment our team with having international law firms to carve out expertise to help us kind of navigate the waters, so to speak. and helping us address all the ex-US stuff and figure out how to get that part of the deal done.
So you work with a large law firm, and then you would rely on that relationship, having that law firm help you find the localized expertise.
In many cases, they actually have offices in the countries we're doing it, so they have the localized expertise themselves. But in a rare occurrence, if they don't, they'll have a network of firms and be able to get us the expertise we need.
That's good. So you're not scrambling to find local experts.
Right. No, that's one of the great values that they bring. I'm not calling law firms in Timbuktu trying to figure out who can do M&A there. They have the network built in and rely on them.
So what are the biggest complexities when it comes to doing those cross-border deals? Because I feel like the people laws are always a lot more complicated outside the U.S.
The European Works Council and the people issues are very complex. I think for me personally, the two things that come up as complexities is, like I said before, I'm a U.S. attorney. I know how to do U.S. M&A. I don't know what I don't know in those other countries. So I really rely on the local law firm to tell me, like, if there's something that needs to happen in that country. Like if you're in Germany and you have to go to a notary when you're signing up your deal docs, like you need, and I know that now because I've done plenty of German deals, but things like that when there's a local law requirement, and if I don't know it as a U.S. attorney because we wouldn't do it in the U.S., getting the right law firm to help you navigate that. The other difficulty is just, it's almost like, I don't know if the right word is cultural, but when you're doing a deal that's sometimes on the other side of the world, you have time zone issues, you have language issues. We're fortunate in the U.S. A lot of times people will be able to speak English to us in our negotiations, and if not, they'll have somebody there who speak English. But oftentimes it's not their first language, so it can be complex trying to negotiate a complex transaction with somebody that might not be their first language. The time zone aspect, like I said, and sometimes there's cultural norms where it can be a little difficult trying to get things done on Zoom, something like that, which is one thing that I've found is an advantage. In this day post-COVID, a lot of stuff is done on Zoom. A lot of negotiations are Zoom, not as in person as they used to be. I was doing a deal in Europe. We're negotiating it on Zoom, and I've found that because of the time difference and also language and just it was difficult. It drug the negotiation out over several weeks, where I thought we would just get in the room with them and just establish a rapport, because you have a different rapport when you're in a room with somebody, looking them in the eye, than just going on the computer screen. If we just get in the room with them and get it done, it would have been like a 2-day thing instead of 2-week. So I was hopeful, like around code time, like I do think that's still important. It's something that should still come back. And I don't, sometimes it can be costly, but it might be actually cost efficient to actually travel someplace, get in a room, and you save time in the long run, save expense. And I've seen that on other, we have traveled, it's come back a little bit, traveling to other places. We did a deal in Asia when at the time, when I say time zone, it's just the time windows to actually negotiate and like turn documents. It would just really drag it on. But by going to a place, sitting in a room, flipping documents live, it just makes it much more efficient. The trust, I think, is a different level, and you can kind of feel out the cultural aspects. And I really think it's important to still sit in a room when it calls for it. Sometimes things can still be done over Zoom and cross borders, but sometimes you kind of feel it like this is one we need to actually get in a room with these people and get it done.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's a whole thing of like, what is this thing, 70-80% body language?
Yeah, yeah. And that's the thing. Like, I feel like especially in some other cultures, like my body language and might be even more so than it is here in the U.S. So it is important to like get in a room with people.
That's a fair point. Do you have a cross-border deal that you found like particularly challenging you could talk about that maybe has some interesting lessons learned from it?
I kind of actually just touched on it. It was that one that I was talking about in Europe, where the negotiation took us like 2 weeks jumping on the Zoom every day for like 3-4 hours, because then it got to the end of the day, they need to go to bed. And then it took so long that it's not to reiterate what I had just said, but it really, the lesson learned was like, don't be afraid to go get in a room. It's still a good way to get, sometimes the efficient way. It can help deals get done a lot quicker sometimes, to just go there, be in person on those cross-border deals.
Technology is playing an increasing role in M&A.
Mm-hmm.
How have you guys leveraged tools like deal rooms to streamline your processes?
Deal room has been very efficient for us. It's the data room aspect is great. We use it to put a ton of stuff in there. It's very user friendly for sharing of documents. Even if it's not like diligence documents, we can share other documents in there because our whole team is on there. It's very helpful. You guys have actually rolled out a new tool of the AI that helps with diligence. We're exploring that. I think there's some great opportunity there to help streamline a process, enhance cost efficiencies. If you're being able to get, you still need a human to do it, but the AI can reduce the time to do it significantly. See some good value opportunity there. And then there's other things like using online platforms for like integration or something like that to be a single source of truth instead of just passing around like Excel documents and email and having everything leave an email. Having online platforms that serve as a single source of truth for diligence documents, deal docs, integration stuff. So really leveraging the software and technology space there.
I don't want to make this too big of a commercial for Deal Room, but I got you here.
Okay.
So the thing I'm really curious about, like I watch you guys do $35+ billion of deals in just like the last 3 years. Mm-hmm. And all these deals, and it's all public. There's always JPM, Goldman Sachs, Lazard, Guggenheim, like top tier banks on all those deals. All those major deals you ran through Deal Room. Mm-hmm. And I always get this thing where like bankers, they're always obsessed over the old school data rooms that still bill per page. And that's what they always want you to use. How did you convince them to go otherwise?
Yeah, I mean, I think bankers probably like their built-in tools that they're just used to using. But when you're a regular M&A player, our team is fully up to speed on how to use Deal Room, has all the functionality we need. At the end of the day, the bankers work for us. So if we say we want to use Deal Room, they in both cases in other cases they've like tested it and they're like, yeah, it works. So I guess to more directly answer your question, like if you have a tool that you really want to use, force the issue and say this is what we're going to use.
I got it. So because your adoption is so strong in the company, that sort of makes it an easier leverage because you're like, hey, we don't have to worry about, because you got so many people in your company on the buy side that are going to be engaged in this deal. They don't have to learn something new. They've already are familiar with this. This is what they know day in, day out. And they
that's exactly right. It's also kind of self-fulfilling where it's we've done billions of dollars of deals using Deal Room. So they can't say like, you can't run a deal like this on Deal Room. Like we've done it. This is going to be fine. Let's use this.
I'm going to coach you on that, by the way. You're going to be our next ad for. So anyways, I don't want to press on it too much. If people are interested, just go to the website and learn more. And broadly though, how would you say technology, AI, automations impacted the legal approach in M&A?
I think the biggest the biggest point is really diligence, helping with contracts and taking out that very time-consuming part of a deal. Firms are usually having first year, second year people right out of law school doing it, but it still costs a ton of money. So being able to leverage AI technologies to help maybe bring some of that in-house or lower cost sources, I think that's one of the biggest points. But the AI revolution or whatever you want to call it is happening, and we're always looking we don't want to get left behind, so we're always like investigating, talking to people, seeing like how we can better leverage technology. And I'm sure as it all continues to develop, it'll become more and more intertwined in the M&A process. And I feel like ignoring the trends and where technology is going is to do so at your own peril, because it's the future.
Sounds like you're pretty optimistic about where this is going and not. I mean, just trying to play devil's advocate, I would one, be concerned about accuracy. We just had an example of where AI generated our interview outline, and we specifically talked about things to omit from it, but it included it, right? Mm-hmm. And like, would you have? And my thing was like, hey, somebody should have actually still done the original work and did their review, and they would have caught that mistake. Do you have concerns around that of AI sort of people getting too dependent, and then it ends up making mistakes?
I think you can't at this stage. AI does not replace humans completely. What it does is it takes a team of, instead of 5 or 6 humans reviewing, but with the AI pulling it all faster, maybe you can get it down to a team of 1 or 2 humans. But then the humans do need to the humans actually need to tell the AI what to do. So you still need that interface, and you still need people to go back and quality check, make sure that what's being spit out is accurate. And so not relying 100% on AI, but using it as a tool to make everything more efficient, but still having the human component to it as well is still definitely needed.
What are like the positive business outcomes that would make you motivated to adopt? Is it cutting costs? Say, hey, we can save money on external legal fees, or is it just getting things done faster? Like,
it's both. It's cutting costs. And in business, at the end of the day, that's the bottom line. Like, you cut costs, that's of course going to be a great value proposition. But it also is saving time. It's freeing teams up to focus on more sophisticated tasks where they might need a higher level of thought, things that AI can't do, at least yet. So it really frees up time. It brings down costs and frees up time to spend that time on more valuable projects and parts of a deal.
What about these external counsels that want to raise fees every year? Like, what's gonna?
I don't know where you want to start. It's the fees of outside lawyers keep going up and up for sure. It's tough, but I think that's also really driving teams, in-house teams, to look at what tools they can use and what things they can bring in from an outside counsel. So only use the outside counsel for the most sophisticated and pressing parts of the deal, and try to bring other parts in-house and help leverage the tool. So as the firms are charging more, the overall deal fees might not be near the same as people try to bring other parts that they traditionally might have put out to a law firm, try to bring them in-house. I've heard from other in-house colleagues at other places that they're also really looking at ways to do stuff in-house and decrease the reliance on external counsel, because the fees are getting very, very high. That's probably worth a whole other discussion on the fees and what happens when you start paying first years $300,000 and things like that. But for another time.
Now I know who the early adopters are going to be for our AI diligence products out there, especially ours.
Yeah.
Moving from law firm work to an in-house role at Emerson, what strategic changes did you have to make in that transition?
Coming in-house, I talked a little bit earlier about the broader teams, a lot more cross-functional exposure with people that aren't necessarily lawyers. So really kind of building up that skill set. One of the first skill sets you get here is you got to actually figure out who everybody is and who's the right person to go to for this and that, and kind of build a rapport with all these different people outside of the legal department. It's also, I feel like you really increase your business acumen, business strategy. You get a lot more involved on the strategic level. We like to be viewed as business partners with our corporate development or our businesses. We want to be a business partner with them, not just a lawyer. We want to help them form strategies. We want to be pragmatic to, sometimes law firms are very conservative and risk adverse and say no. We want to help get the yes. We want to be a business partner, somebody that our business teams run to instead of away. So kind of really developing that skill set where you really take a pragmatic approach to being a lawyer instead of just saying no. So developing that skill set is another thing that's really, really important for in-house attorneys.
So how does being in-house influence your role beyond doing the legal tasks?
I think our corporate development team, and it's one thing I love about being in-house, they bring me in on strategic discussions. It's not just executing, drafting the agreement. It's how should we position this? How should this negotiation go? How should we set up the data room? What should we do at this fact point? strategy. How are we going to go about executing this deal? There's a lot more input on the strategy part of it than just black and white executing the X's and O's of getting the deal done. And so it's a skill set you need to develop as an in-house lawyer, but it's also, I think, one of the things that makes being in-house so fun and attractive is being able to not just be the lawyer, but being able to weigh in on the strategic aspects of deals and things like that.
What's that conversation look like? Like, just kind of, if you can walk me through, we'll nomatize it, but just that first phone call. Hey, John, we got this deal we're working on,
No, it's, they'll call you up, say they want to talk about a deal. You can go sit in their office and just kind of spitball and bounce first of all, you have to earn trust of your team. Day one, they might not be having these conversations, but you kind of earn your trust over time that they know they can rely on you, that you have sound judgment, good judgment, pragmatic judgment. But then you kind of I'll go sit in their office and we'll just spitball and throw things against the wall and go back and forth and play devil's advocate. As the lawyer, often play devil's advocate, even if it's not something I'm personally champion, just saying like how somebody else might take it. So just kind of spitball and go back and forth and maybe have a strategy session like that. And things like that happen pretty often, and it's enjoyable.
So this is like before we're considering throwing an LOI at a company. This is more of just, hey, here's some ideas of things that we're thinking about doing, or even maybe just initial conversations we're having with this company, and just wanted to get your thoughts on it.
Yeah, I mean, that happens to an extent. I mean, I will say that's probably more at our corporate strategy level, but probably more when we're working towards possibly doing an LOI. There's definitely some strategy brainstorming, like what should we even like bring? I'm going to go have a discussion with them. We don't even draft LOI yet, but like what questions should I ask? What things should we be thinking about? Things like that. Getting involved at that stage.
So like kind of right before that, they're like, hey, we're ready to send this LOI out, but almost of what can we do to sort of shape and get the right information to put together
exactly.
an LOI.
Yep.
You got any key questions there that, I know we talked a little bit about it, and again, you're going to throw it depends on the deal.
That's what I was going to say. That's the default answer for a lawyer.
Now I know how to work with you.
That's the answer to every law school question too. It depends.
Let's make it up. Let's make up a tech company. I like tech because I work in tech, and we're looking to buy this small tech company, and let's say it's in Europe. Even add a little extra layer to it. Hey, it's one where they got big valuation expectations, and we're probably going to have to wrap some kind of earnout in there or figure something out around to bridge that valuation gap. That's what we're got an initial impression on. And
at that point, I would counsel my counterpart to try to avoid an earnout. I know a lot of people, and I used to do that back when I was at a law firm too, is we draft earnouts pretty often, but I guess maybe my personal view is I think they invite disputes after the fact. People are going to fight about, if you do an earnout, they need to be very carefully drafted. But my advice in this scenario would be like, let's find a way to avoid an earnout if possible. Sometimes it's not possible and you have to go down that route. And in that case, you need to get very, very specific in your definitions and parameters, and it becomes a very complex drafting process.
Okay, so we're gonna come back to the avoiding earnout.
Oh, so like some other questions I would ask. So avoid the earnout. You said Europe, so I'd maybe want to figure out what kind of works council issues they have, what their employee base is in works council. It's a tech company, so maybe that's not an issue. It depends where they are, how many employees they have. I'd want to know a little bit about their. You said it's a tech company, so I'd want to know a little bit about their IP portfolio. Is it protected? Do they own everything? Have they had any challenges, challenging like their patents or infringement, anything like that? Is any disputes come up in the past? I'd maybe want to know about their customers and suppliers. Before even like getting into actually reviewing the contracts. Like, do you have? Is your customers, is it spread across a number, or do you have, depending on just one customer, if it's just a small number of customers and that goes away, what's still there? Yeah.
What like this? The change of control provision is always one because I've encountered that on a deal where basically every agreement had a change of control provision. And that was one where it just changes everything because it's like, wow.
So normally you don't really get into the change of control provision, especially like pre-LOI. But if this is a situation where there is like one customer or two customers that are 80% of the business and they have change of control, you maybe want to feel out like, are they going to be an issue with a deal going down? If a seller would probably say no, because why would, but if you identify that there's no way that major customer is going to say yes to your company buying the deal, that's a major red flag. If that's like all the revenue are tied up in one or two people who aren't going to approve the deal, what are you buying? So something to think about.
What if they just had it as standard in their agreement that there's a change of control provision? Like, wouldn't you want to know that before LOI?
You mean like their form customer agreement?
Yeah.
I think at pre-LOI, you're at a little bit higher level stage than getting into what your form agreements have as far as change of control and everything like that. I think you want to identify potential issues with major customers or suppliers too, for that matter. But I don't think you're at that stage. I don't think you're really drilling down into.
Okay, so if I came to the customer saturation and found out, okay, that's like half the revenues from one huge customer, then I would probably dig deeper and say, okay, do they have a change of control provision? Knowing that.
Yeah, you might ask that, like, is there a change of control provision, or do you foresee them objecting to this deal and not consenting to it? That might be the type of thing you put in the LOI. It's conditioned on their approval, so there's no surprises when you put that in the purchase agreement that we're not going to do the deal unless the customer that has 50% of revenue or something gives their consent to the deal, if it's required.
What about people side? Is there anything I want to dig into there that I should be?
Yeah, I mentioned like the works council piece. You might also want to feel out like who are the key people, in an initial discussion like that. Is there a key people? Is there like a key engineer or something that really makes the technology work? And are they about to retire and go away? You kind of feel out what, is there a COO type person who really makes the company tick? And if they're about to get $10 million in the deal or something, are they going to go sit on a beach somewhere and the company will fall apart if this person isn't there? Kind of trying to figure out who the key people are, who you need there. That's a good early discussion point.
Okay.
And then also just going to Europe, like trying to get a sense for the works council and what you're going to have to do there.
Just asking them, like, are your employees part of the works council?
Yeah.
And okay, so we got those part of the employee, knowing the key people, the IP stuff, understanding the customer base or where there might be high saturation or low saturation, and then the earnouts. How do I avoid the earnout? I always think a rollover equity is kind of either here we pay cash or rollover equity. Instead of doing earnout, do we just roll over more equity?
I mean, that's one way you incentivize them that way, that it's not a XYZ formula for the earnout. Just if this company does well, you're going to do well because you still have equity. So that's one way to do it. It's just a heavy negotiation that like this is a fair price and this is why. There might be employment agreements that have it's not necessarily rollover equity, but you might get RSUs or something. So you're
bonus,
bonus, something like that. Something, to the extent you do end up with that, you definitely just want to make sure everything is very well defined, not open for interpretation, because that's when disputes arise. And if you are going to have it or not, it's very important to make it very tight and get the perimeter on it very correct.
Not based on EBITDA.
Yeah.
Not based on EBITDA. This has been great. I got a lot of free legal counsel out of you today. What the future of M&A? How do we feel about the future? Like, how do you see the role of legal teams at M&A evolving? Especially, we talked about technology, and it sounds like more collaborative processes in general.
I'm excited about the future. I don't think I think M&A is always going to be around. It's going to be very important, especially for a place like Emerson. And I think it'll be a matter of figuring out how to work with technology. I did have to say, my wife asked me about the AI. She's like, "Are you worried about AI taking your job?" And I was like, "No, because somebody's supposed to tell the AI what to do." And it's. I think there's still going to be an important place in the future for an in-house M&A legal counsel to work to utilize technology and help everything get done. So
That's good. I like the optimistic view, and I think you're right. I think it gives folks more time to focus on the real people issues and connecting with people. John, what's the craziest thing you've seen in M&A?
I mean, it's hard to get into it. I've seen some threats and some very unprofessional emails from lawyers. I've seen people copying CEOs on random complaints. I've seen, the all-nighters. The one thing about M&A is sometimes when it gets down to those last couple of days, you're doing very long hours. If it's taking calls at family events and stepping out and doing, it's kind of some of the demands that M&A takes, or like I said, pulling the all-nighters, working all night on a deal and signing it at like 7 or 8 in the morning after being up all night. Some of the crazy, more stressful parts of it. But like I said, I thrive on that, especially on the in-house role. It's kind of few and far between. They happen, but it's not every week, so it's manageable.
That's true. That can really push your limits.
Yeah.
What do you do? What do you do to pull those all-nighters? A lot of Red Bull? Like what's
Bang, energy drinks, coffee. Sometimes you got to rely on a lot of caffeine, but it's worth it to get it done, and the feeling you get when you get that deal across the finish line.
Then you go take a vacation after?
Sometimes. There used to be closing dinners, which were pretty fun. They don't happen as much as they used to. But been to a couple fun ones of those over the years, and I heard even before my time, I've been doing this for about 14 years, but I heard they were even crazier back in the day, but they're fun things to look forward to after getting a deal done.
No big sabbatical. We might get a closing dinner.
Yeah. No, we're got to get back to work.
Absolutely. The next deal's around the corner.
Yep, exactly.
Hey, John, this has been a great conversation. Thanks for taking the time, helping me become a better M&A scientist.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming in.
Those fellow M&A scientists tuned in, thanks for sticking through. I love to hear from you, feedback, criticism. Always welcome criticism. I want to get better at this. Reach out to me on LinkedIn. Till next time, here's to the deal.